welcome back. Um, we will now start the afternoon session of today's meeting, and that will be largely the reports from our various agency members. And so, the very first report that I would like to acknowledge and give opportunity to speak with us today is a little out of order from what you see before you, but Dr. Phil Wilson has to leave us a little early, so he has asked if he could speak first. And so I'm granting that request. And Dr. Wilson, sir, you have the floor. Again, he is from our Human Development Center. And so, Dr. Wilson, the floor is yours, sir.
It looks like he hasn't joined the call yet.
He has not joined us yet? Is that right?
I'm not seeing him.
Do we know if he's in the process of joining us? Because I know he asked to go first.
I don't know. Let me try to check with him.
Okay, thank you. Everyone just bear with us for a moment. Okay, if he's not yet ready, then we can go ahead and move forward first with Louisiana Rehabilitation Services, if Melissa is available.
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, thank you, Melissa. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to give you this report and take any questions that you may have. I won't go over all the numbers in my report, but you will see for the quarter the statistics for vocational rehabilitation as numbers served, as well as the council has requested in my report that we give numbers on the individuals with developmental disabilities, the number of individuals that we're serving in each region. So you have a chart of that as well as how many cases were closed rehabilitated for the quarter. There's also a report on something Ms. Tarver had mentioned earlier, which is the Rehabilitation Employment Development Specialists. Those are the internal job developers, if you will, for Louisiana Rehabilitation Services. We have a lot of new, what we call REDs in some of the regions. And as she stated, we are still seeking a REDs for the Alexandria region and the Houma region. They're not currently posted on the Civil Service website, where they've been posted several times, but they, just a little clarification, we are working on getting them reposted again. We've been having a lot of difficulty getting applicants for the position. So hopefully if you have any recommendations, please let us know, because we would really like to have this position filled in each of our regions. I'd also like to note that our advisory council, which is the Louisiana Rehabilitation Council, will be meeting next Thursday, July the 29th. I know a lot of you probably won't be able to make it to that because I think it's during the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs conference, but it is next week unless they decide to change it because of the conference. I just wanted to again reiterate, as I've done over the last several quarters, that we continue our efforts in becoming more electronic and just serving our consumers virtually better. So we are still working on that. We have a vendor portal that we are about to launch to help us to get invoices and documentation from vendors electronically, and just looking at different ways in order to serve people better when they feel safer doing that virtually. And in some situations, it's just easier for a consumer. But the main thing I wanted to focus on and to announce today is that the Louisiana Workforce Commission is launching a Back to Work Louisiana campaign. The additional unemployment insurance benefits will be ending at the end of the month. So after the end of this month, it's just the customary state unemployment insurance benefits. So it won't be the extra money that individuals have been getting. So we actually have a website, which I will put in the chat, dedicated to this campaign, but it's laworks.net/back-to-work-LA. And we will be having job fairs in every region of the state on August the 4th. And if you go to the website that I'll put in the chat, you can see when and where those job fairs will be in your location. Some of them are from 9 to 12, and some of them are a little bit later to 1 or 2 o'clock, but you can see where it's located in your area. If you don't feel comfortable, obviously, going in person to some of these job fairs, you can also go on the LA Works website, where we have all of our job postings available. Right now, there's over 50,000 job postings. So there's at least 50,000 jobs available in Louisiana. You will also notice on the website, there are some videos that you may have seen on Facebook or other social media platforms. One that actually has Secretary Cates, the Secretary of the Louisiana Workforce Commission, and the governor talking about this campaign to get people in Louisiana back to work. So with that, I will take any questions or anything else that you'd like to for me to talk about.
Okay, so any questions for Melissa with regard to her report?
Lillian Dejean has her hand raised.
Yes, Lillian, you have the floor.
So just a brief question. Under your report in the open VR cases and closed, you have different categorizations of disability like autism, cerebral palsy, intellectual disability, and specific learning disability. And I was curious to know, how do you categorize the individuals who may not fit under any of these categories?
That's kind of why we have a lot of categories, and that specific learning disability category seems to kind of be a category that counselors kind of gravitate to in those types of situations. So we have different categories in our case management system. And so these are the different categories that we felt would most accurately depict the developmental disability population. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lillian. Are there any other questions for Melissa with regard to her report?
Dr. McKee has her hand raised.
Yes, Dr. McKee, you have the floor.
Melissa, thank you so much for the report, and thank you so much for your team and all the work that you all are doing with LRS. I see you guys being very active across the state, and I see the attempts of trying to make sure that our folks are getting meaningful jobs and meaningful employments. I just want to have one question and then, well, maybe two questions. The first question is, I was wondering, where does Region 9 fit in, where the DD open cases? Would that be under the New Orleans area? Where are those cases counted?
Can you remind me, because we don't use those regions, what?
Oh, that would be Slidell, St. Tammany. Where are those numbers falling?
So some of those will be in Region 1 and some will be in Region 2.
Okay. And so that's just something you guys have standard across the board. And I'm just wondering, just for the benefit of the public and understanding, because we have 10 regions, is it something to consider to perhaps maybe allow that region to have its own category? Or maybe that's something you all do based on, what you've traditionally done.
Right. And I don't know the exact political answer to this, but I can
Okay.
tell you the workforce regions are different than the Department of Health regions.
Okay.
Not exactly sure why that is, but that's how our regional offices, we have 8, and that's how they're depicted as based on the workforce regions, which if you go to our website, under our section where it lists all of our regions, it tells you which parishes are covered in each region.
And then the last question, I think, speaks to a little bit of what we've discussed prior, and I know there's so many things going on with COVID, but I think we said a couple meetings ago, trying to connect you all with the Department of Education as it relates to being with the transitional planning more, because you guys do a lot of great work. And I'm just wondering if there's some kind of way we can support LRS and Workforce Solutions and Tri-Parent, all of those entities with being connected with our scholars that are approaching graduation and transitioning into post-secondary opportunities. Like how, there's got to be a way for us to support you in getting this information out and making sure this is happening for them.
Yes, thank you so much for that. We've had a little bit of a challenge connecting because we keep getting different people with the Department of Education. And our last contact, and I can't remember her name right now. I believe she was at the last council meeting. From what I understand, is not there anymore. So that's kind of the issue that we've been having, is establishing a consistent contact with the Department of Education, if that makes sense. But we appreciate any efforts to assist us with that. Thank you.
Are
Rosalind
there
has
any
her
other
hand raised.
questions for Amy with regard to her report?
Rosalind has her hand raised.
Yes, Rosalind, you have the floor.
All right, from this page right here that you have in it, with all of these numbers, I'm trying to really understand with a DD opening with a VR case as of July 30th of 2021.
Okay, so that's a snapshot. If we looked at all of our open cases on June the 30th, that's the number of individuals who have that disability who have open cases. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how many cases are there to make up for the total
The total?
192, 2290?
So are you asking how many total, like the total is 2,929 as far as
Yeah.
the number of individuals with developmental disabilities?
Yes,
Are you asking the total of all VR cases?
yes.
Okay, I'm not
To
sure.
make that amount to come up.
Right, I'm not sure on this particular day that this was run, but we've been running about 82. Well, probably at this point we were running about 82 to 8,300. So right now we have about 8,900, but that wasn't with this particular report. So since we have more consumers now, that number is probably higher as of today. But yes.
So how can I find out more about it besides this way?
So what other information would you like? I mean, the numbers change every day because we open and close cases every day.
Do they add more cases individual?
Yes. Every day we open new cases and every day we close cases. So the number changes daily.
Yeah, because the one down here underneath it, DD closes, and it's less than that, 82. So they don't.
That's how many were closed in the quarter, and closed rehabilitated, meaning, for us to close a case rehabilitated, it means that individual has to be stable in their employment and they had to have been stable for at least 90 days.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you, Rosalind. Are there any other questions for Melissa with regard to her report today?
Charlie Michelle has his hand raised.
Yes, Charlie, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Melissa, I just wanted to make an observation. It's not a question. I'm extremely impressed with the number of students with developmental disabilities on there, because as you probably know, that makes up less than 2% of the special ed population in Louisiana. And yet that's probably, what is it, 25% of the cases that y'all have. And those are students that need the most support. And I know in the past, years past, that wasn't always the case as far as VR's ability to meet those needs. But I have to say it's quite impressive to see how y'all are really going where the needs are. And I want to thank you for that effort on y'all part.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but I will clarify, in all honesty, that's all of our VR cases. So that's not necessarily just students, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Charlie. Are there any other questions for Melissa with regard to our report today? Okay, hearing none. Melissa, thank you so much for the work you and your team do, and your report will be entered into the record.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to put that website into the chat. And please know that at all of these job fairs, there will be an individual from LRS at all of these job fairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and so now Dr. Phil Wilson, if he's available, we're ready for his report. The Human Development Center, Dr. Wilson, sir, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to read the report. Everyone has it. I'll just remind people that you have this report. We submit it every quarter. So basically, we're doing more of the same. I think we have launched a couple new years for our interdisciplinary training programs. So we have approximately 20 to 25 new long-term trainees that will be starting in their programs in August. The trainees are typically individuals who are working on a graduate program in an education or health-related career field. Also individuals who are self-advocates, and family members are also recruited into the programs or interdisciplinary training programs. Finally, we every year we usually end up with one or two individuals who are practicing professionals in one discipline or another. So anyhow, so that program, those two programs have launched for the upcoming year. We're hoping, as of before the latest surge, we anticipated doing everything live. I think right now we're back to not quite sure knowing if we're going to be able to do our classes and seminars and whatnot live, or if we have to stay with a virtual format. Okay, so there's that. As you know, we also do early childhood and programs and training. Our child care center is been devastated with the impacts of trying to hire people or retain people in child care. That's common across the state right now, but it is really kind of made it difficult for us to keep serving the same number of families. So we're again hoping with the change in the unemployment program that maybe there'll be more people entering the workforce who have been sitting out for a bit. And when that happens, hopefully we'll be able to expand not only grow our program back, but actually expand it a little bit. So there's two programs there. The other big thing in early childhood is we have a new initiative area that IPEC, I can't remember what it stands for, but inclusive preschool education training for teachers and directors and family members to help them be more confident and better able to provide best practices in early childhood education, especially for kiddos who have disabilities. And the school age front, Julie Riley continues to just be pretty amazing. And in terms of trying to work with the new system that the Department of Ed put in place a year or two ago, where everything is basically outsourced to contractors. And there's a big vendor guide that each local education agency or LEA or individual school can select from. And we were pretty afraid that this might make it really difficult to keep our LaSard program and other educational training and continuing ed programs viable. But in fact, it's turned out to actually work, although there's a lot of internal strife with figuring out how to run the actual business end of it through a bunch, I think we have over 40 individual contracts with individual schools and school districts, where we used to get one contract from the Department of Ed. So you might imagine that our business office is way overtaxed on trying to figure out how to make this system work. But to Julie's credit and the credit of all the folks that work on that project, I think we probably have 40-50% more work than we've had in the past. So that's pretty amazing. And then the third area that we do a lot of work in is our transition, employment, and careers area. We've been working closely with LRS and Melissa's staff and with individuals in school districts around mostly in the metropolitan area. And that's partly an artifact of how difficult it is to have a project in Shreveport and administer it from New Orleans. But we're trying to slowly figure out how to expand the projects we do in transition. And we are amazed and very almost on a cloud that we were approached by a school district on the North Shore who has seen some of the work that Sue Killam and her group do in Jefferson Parish and in some of the charter schools here in New Orleans Parish. And they would like to replicate the model. So we're actively looking at that, and also looking at having a implementation role and a project search program with Ochsner Hospital, which we also are excited that Ochsner is such a statewide presence that perhaps if we can manage to pull that off and do a good job with it, maybe it's something we can try to take to scale over time of replicating not only in metropolitan area here or Baton Rouge, but really all around the state with a model that is very replicable. So those are the big things that we're doing. We had sent a short video just to highlight one of the program areas that we are working on now and have been for some time, which is the Louisiana Deaf Blind Project, which is a project that looks to provide technical assistance and training and other types of supports to schools and school districts that are serving kids with deaf blindness. I don't know who up at the DD Council actually has the link, but if we have time, I think the video is about 3.5 minutes. So I'll leave that up to Randall, to you and the folks that.
I think we have the time, sir. If you have the video ready to go.
I don't. It's sent to you guys to do, because we don't. That's
Okay,
where
staff, do we have his video ready to play?
I don't have it ready. If you could give me a minute, I'll see if I can. I can't.
Okay, well, in the meantime, I'll ask if there are any questions with regard to Dr. Wilson's report that he's given so far to us. Are there any questions of Dr. Wilson with regard to his report that he's given to us so far? Everyone bear with us just a moment.
Rosalind has her hand raised.
Yes, Rosalind.
Yeah, like Phil kind of said with us in Jefferson Parish in it. I want to know how many work centers or work programs are there to really, for all with a disability, people in Jefferson Parish itself. That's what I wanted to know.
So if that question's for me, I would just say that we don't work with work centers. We work with community employment only, competitive and integrated employment. So we work with individuals. I think we have a little over 40 kids, young people, I should say, between the ages of 18 and early 20s, who are in one way or another actively seeking employment and a career path. And so we work with the schools and community college, primarily Delgado Community College, but some other community colleges as well. And obviously LRS and workforce to kind of craft and a curriculum around the WIOA requirements, and then also to take those individuals as they complete their pre-eds and move them into actual employment and get them launched. And then typically they are sort of pick a provider from the provider list who can provide their ongoing support if needed.
How
So
many providers could you really get in one particular parish, like
Well-
in Jefferson to New Orleans?
So
Yeah.
I think that I'm not going to put Melissa on that spot either, but there is a list of providers by their location who are on the freedom of choice list. And so each, obviously larger population centers are going to have typically more providers than the very rural and remote areas. But I can't tell you, I know at one point in time, there were over 70 supported employment providers. I believe that number has dwindled, but I couldn't say for sure. And I don't know if Melissa knows any of that just off the top of her head and wants to respond to you.
I definitely don't know the numbers off the top of my head. They definitely have been reduced in the last year or so. But if you need a list of providers, we can get whichever area you're in, and we can get you a list of the providers in your area.
So,
Thank you for that, Melissa. Thank you.
I don't know
Phil.
if Amy or somebody at the council was able to pull up the video. If not, we can always do it another time. I know we're desperately behind schedule today, so.
Okay. We apologize. Is the video ready to be played, Amy?
I just located it. It actually was sent to Courtney. So we don't have it ready to play right at this minute. We may be able to play it a little later if we want to keep moving forward, and then we could play it later if people would like.
And I just have to say that unfortunately I have another appointment that I'm gonna have to leave the meeting at around 2:45. So if it
We
ends up
understand,
later,
sir.
I won't be able to answer any questions about it, that's all.
Well, thank you, sir, for your report. And are there any other questions, Phil, regarding his report today?
Jill Hano has her hand raised.
Yes, Jill, you have the floor.
Dr. Belt, refresh my memory, please. What does LaSarge stand for?
LASARD stands for the Louisiana Autism and Related Disabilities Project. And it's been in existence since 2005. It started out with a very specific focus on autism, and really now really needs to be renamed, because we focus on those things that the Department of Ed and the school districts kind of feel are of the biggest importance to them providing quality educational experiences and services. So, while we still have people with definite expertise and passion in the area of autism, we have a much larger staff with much broader background and experience. And we do not, when the program is not like something that's just for kiddos who are on the autism spectrum. We really work with kids at pretty much every level, including kids that we don't work directly with them, but we provide the training and technical assistance to the educators to work with kids, even kids that are, by any other way of thinking about it, may not have any sort of identifiable educational disability, but still may have challenges, or teachers or educators may still need some support to provide services to them. Obviously, our main focus is going to always be on kids with developmental and intellectual disabilities.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions for Phil with regard to his report today?
We do have the video ready now.
Okay, great. Can we go ahead and play it?
We are the Louisiana Deafblind Project for Children and Youth, and we work with deafblind children and young adults in Louisiana.
A map outlining the USA is 50 states.
Our project is one of over 50 state deafblind projects funded by a grant from the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs. These projects serve about 10,000 deafblind students nationally. The Louisiana Deafblind Child Count includes roughly 100 individuals and growing.
A map of Louisiana parishes appears with current deafblind registrants. Dark purple parishes represents 10 or more children.
Our project maintains the Louisiana Deafblind Registry, and we provide support to individual students who are deafblind and their families, schools, and school systems. We are located at the Human Development Center at LSU Health, New Orleans.
A star appears on the Louisiana map indicating the Human Development Center's location in New Orleans. A young girl feels with her fingers to track braille dots on a page.
The Louisiana Deafblind Project serves students who have a combination of vision and hearing loss, even if mild, from birth to 22 years of age across the state of Louisiana.
A young man uses his voice to digitally label an item.
Roughly 90% of students on the Louisiana Deafblind Registry have one or more additional disabilities.
A young girl learns braille by coloring a print representation of the braille letter R. A young girl explores changing textures on the ground.
Most of the students served by the Louisiana Deafblind Project have been qualified to receive special education and related services. However, few are classified as deafblind on their individual education plans, or IEPs.
The young girl explores tactile pictures with her hands.
They are most often classified under multiple disabilities or other health impairment. For this reason, under-identification of deafblind students remains an issue. The Louisiana Deafblind Project offers individual supports and recommendations to students, families, professionals, and school districts regarding best practices when working with deafblind students. Services can be requested by families, professionals, school districts, or young adult students themselves. We offer educational guidance.
An image appears of a project staff member introducing Braille to educational interpreters.
Family support and training.
A girl plays patty cake with her teacher.
ASL and Braille classes.
A hand reading Braille.
Planning for transition into adulthood, including employment, post-secondary opportunities, and independent living.
A young man shreds a document.
Professional development.
Teachers learn Braille to support their students.
Referrals for specialized evaluations.
A project staff member demonstrates assistive technologies.
And deafblind intervener training.
A young girl works with her intervener. The images form into the state of Louisiana.
We are the Louisiana Deafblind Project for Children and Youth. For more information, please contact us by phone at 504-556-3455 or email ladbp@lsuhsc.edu. Our website is www.hdc.lsuhsc.edu/LADBP.
All right, thank you, sir, for that, providing us with that information. So now I'll ask if you want to give any additional information with regard to that video we just saw, or if you want to take questions on the video.
Yeah, I don't know why the quality didn't work well. I'm not sure what happened there but we can make that link available to people if anybody wants to hear it.
Okay, great.
Didn't seem to play very well.
So there's the link.
Thank you.
So thank you, sir. Are there any questions with regard to the video for Dr. Wilson? Okay. Does that conclude your report with us today, sir? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for the work you do and your team does. Your report will be entered into the record. Up next for us to hear from is the Disability Rights Louisiana. Is the representative from Disability Rights Louisiana still with us today?
Yep, that is me, Randall.
Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Thanks. I do apologize. I didn't actually submit a copy of the written report. I didn't know. It's my first time, so I didn't actually finish it until yesterday. So I apologize for that. I can send it so people can actually have it. But I will go over the high points. So those of you who've been on the council for a while may know that our organization has been running a class action litigation against the state of Louisiana and the Department of Corrections for the treatment of prisoners with serious mental illness, specifically with respect to using solitary confinement of prisoners with serious mental illness. That class action litigation has been going on for a few years now. It actually predates my time at the organization, and I've been here more than 2 years now. We're still involved in it, and let's see, we have spent time recently actually going to the prison, spending time there, and completing a lot of depositions. We've gotten some positive results from the judge and a little outreach recently on possible settlement with the Department of Corrections, but that's all very preliminary. And we are basically in the kind of the expert testimony phase of that litigation right now. So that is continuing, and that is currently set for trial in January. So we will know more, a lot more in January, hopefully, or thereabouts, about what is happening with that. That also dovetails with legislation that we supported during the legislative session, which was House Bill 68, which was to end solitary confinement for people with serious mental illness. We supported the initial version of that legislation, the introduced version of it. Was introduced by Rep. Landry. And initially, the Louisiana Stop Solitary Confinement Coalition that we work with on this, we're not actually a part of the coalition, but we do work with them. They had indicated to us that the Department of Corrections supported the initial version of that bill, which sounded a bit surprising to us given our experience with litigation. And the department definitely wanted some changes in that bill as it went through the legislative process. So that bill didn't even clear committee. A task force has been put together to work with the department to try and hammer out some language with the goal of hopefully trying to or at least severely limit the use of solitary confinement for people with serious mental illness. And that task force is going to be meeting, I believe, through next year. What else? We spent a good part of this year early on dealing with COVID-19 issues, of course. We were focusing on the 500 private ICFs in the state that have a census of about 3,500 residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We pushed early on to get more stringent guidelines around PPE usage. We're trying to make sure care wasn't rationed in a way that discriminated against people with disabilities of any type. And we also we spent a large part, the early part of the year, pushing for increased testing. That's a little less relevant now, but maybe getting relevant again. And we have actually we have been meeting with our partners in the DD network to discuss concerns about the opening of day hab programs when they opened up, because we were concerned that day hab programs were potentially opened up a little early given the positivity numbers. So we spent the first part of the year working on COVID issues like that. Also, we maintain our community living ombudsman program, which still operated during the pandemic and shutdowns. Not that the pandemic is actually over. Basically, in this program, we have trained advocates, which are our ombudsmen, and they advocate for people with disabilities who live in the privately run group homes that I mentioned across the state. We had to actually adapt a bit during the shutdowns because, of course, we couldn't go into all these homes in person for obvious reasons. So our staff had to find different ways to interact with the folks that we're trying to monitor, make sure they're okay. We remotely monitored the homes. Our staff even performed driveway visits when possible to actually see residents in person. That has, of course, changed. Now we can actually get back into various facilities and homes. But during the pandemic, we had to adjust quite a bit and have our staff find different ways to still do their job while not being able to actually be present in homes and do their jobs directly in person. We are also continuing to expand investigations with the Attorney General's Medicaid fraud unit. We're recording resident complaints and monthly complaint requests and resolutions. And we're involved in sending administrators guidance on resident property duties and medical consent for vaccines. Let's see. Also, we wanted to make sure that the LDH's health standard surveys met with our own monitoring. So we actually did our own surveys of various facilities on things like vaccination, infection, well, not vaccination so much, but infections, things like that, to make sure that this was actually being done. We did find that our surveys of some of these facilities turned up more COVID cases than were being reported. So that was something we were working on. And we also filed in the early part of the year, and this will be current as of about May or so, about 24 formal complaints against group home providers with LDH's health standards units. A number of complaints included neglect of health. There were 13 of those. Improper discharge, 4 of those. Physical assault by another resident. We had 3 complaints involving that. Improper use of restraints and injury from restraints. There are 2 complaints of that. Issues regarding resident funds, 2 complaints of that. I won't go through all of them, but we had a number of complaints that we filed with health standards. We also have taken part in a task force convened by Senator Barrow. It's the Task Force on Prevention of Human Degradation and Exploitation of Vulnerable Individuals in Community-Based Residential Settings. This is a task force, or this is as a result of legislation that Senator Barrow introduced at least back in 2019, perhaps earlier. I say that because my first year here was 2019, so that was my first awareness of it. Essentially, it was legislation that would regulate who could live in facilities that are misidentified as group homes, but really what they are board and care facilities. And the legislation, I think, was created in response to complaints from some residents of a specific neighborhood in Baton Rouge where a number of board and care facilities were opened. And I'm sure some of you have had experience with facilities where some are not run as well as it can be. Some, all of residents' federal benefits and can only provide them with much in the way of services. But in Baton Rouge, a number of these have popped up, and Senator Barrow wants to address that issue. The initial legislation had some significant issues with it, including the fact that the way it was written, it probably would have excluded people with many types of disabilities from most rental housing in the state. And that legislation, of course, never passed, fortunately. But the senator did convene a task force that we have taken part in to try and actually draft language that would address the issues that she's concerned about, while also not excluding people with disabilities from rental housing, which, again, the language of every version of the bill I've read would do that. So we were working on that. I believe we are included on the extended version of the task force that's coming up, and we will continue to work on that. The senator does want to address this in the upcoming 2022 legislative session with a bill that she hopes will pass, and we'd like to make sure that the language is drafted appropriately and doesn't do anything harmful to people with disabilities, of course. During the legislative session, we also got involved in House Bill 255, which one of our attorneys flagged for me. It was legislation that would ban the abortion and sterilization of individuals who are interdicted. Again, people may be familiar with this, but under current Louisiana law, getting somebody to be prohibited, who's interdicted, to be prohibited from getting an abortion or sterilization, it can often be a kind of a rubber stamp process, and it probably violates, well, not probably, it violates the rights of the people who are interdicted. A state rep to actually fix this issue, but the language in the bill simply went very much in the opposite direction and banned the sterilization and abortions for people with banned judicial approval of sterilization and abortions for people with who are interdicted. That's of course a complete ban would of course also be unconstitutional. So we worked with the bill sponsor on that. Drafted language with the goal of actually creating a process that actually involved the individual who was interdicted, involved representation for the person who was interdicted, and actually created a process that that a court had to follow to go through one of these proceedings, because there really aren't any proceedings currently in Louisiana law on this. The sponsor actually was open to the language, but didn't want to change everything in such a short time frame. So we will be working with that bill sponsor likely in the upcoming session to continue and draft something that will be acceptable and actually create a process that will respect the rights and wishes of interdicted individuals in these matters. And that will be continuing next term. We also flagged legislation that a senator from, a state rep from Northern Louisiana introduced. It was an attempt to address an issue in her district. She was concerned with individuals who knowingly expose others to sexually transmitted diseases. And one of the odd things about the legislation was that it was written in such a way that in the penalty part of the legislation, it had standard penalties for anybody who commits this offense or who this would be offense. And then, of course, like other legislation often does, it had enhanced penalties for more aggravated versions of the offense. And oddly, one of the enhanced penalties was if a person had an intellectual disability who committed this offense, there would be higher penalties for that person. The higher penalties would be increased fines and jail time. So it actually was introduced in a way that would increase criminal penalties for someone if that person has an intellectual disability, which upon reading the bill, I wondered if maybe the intent was to increase penalties if if the victim had an intellectual disability, not the perpetrator, but the language of the bill very clearly created an enhanced penalty for a perpetrator if the perpetrator had an intellectual disability. We did speak with the rep on that, and she was actually willing to be accommodating. We showed up in committee to oppose it because we didn't actually hear back from her on our suggested changes before the committee. And then when she went to committee to testify on it, she voluntarily deferred her bill for work next year. But we'll be keeping an eye on that because obviously we don't want legislation introduced or passed that would actually increase penalties for somebody because they have a certain disability. So that is something to keep an eye on for next year. And for those who are interested, that was House Bill 238. What else? There were a number of bills we supported during the session. One of the ones that caught our attention that we worked with Senator Hewitt on a little bit was House Bill 704. It was one of the voting bills that the governor actually vetoed. But what that bill did, it was one of the things it did was create polling place watchers for early voting polling places. And it looks like by reference and actually by inclusion of the language, it included language in existing Louisiana statutes that actually excludes people with a number of disabilities from serving as polling place watchers. Basically, there is sort of what appears to be an artifact in current Louisiana law that says that those who are eligible to receive assistance in voting, which includes a broad range of people with disabilities, are not eligible to serve as polling place watchers. And House Bill 704 incorporated that in one section by reference and also incorporated that simply by actually adding that language into the bill. We flagged the language that was in the bill and it went through Senator Hewitt's committee and she agreed to have it removed before it was passed, and she did. We did not catch the language that incorporated the statute by reference. So that bill was actually vetoed anyway and did not, of course, get overridden during the override session. But one of the things I'm thinking about doing for the upcoming year legislatively, and this is RS 18427, that has this language in it, is seeing if we can get support from get a sponsor and get support from the Secretary of State to remove this language in existing statutes, because it shouldn't be there in the first place because it excludes people with disabilities from doing something very basic like being a polling place watcher. It's maybe not as a practical matter, maybe not the biggest thing in the world, but it still shouldn't be in statute. So in and of itself, it's worth removing, but also it appears like something that people sort of just through custom and practice incorporate into new legislation when they draft it because they see the existing law and they either copy this language into it or incorporate it by reference to the statute. And we should probably get at the root of the problem and just stop that. So that is something I'm looking at doing for the upcoming legislative session and working on, because that language should not be in existing statute, and we don't want people to keep using it to draft new legislation. And that's basically a summary of what we've been working on.
Okay, sir, thank you. Are there any questions for Tory with regard to his report today? Yes, Johano, I see your hand is raised. You have the floor.
Okay. All these bills you mentioned, do we have the name of all these bills on record in the transcript?
I can actually send. I apologize for not having pre-sent my report. I can just send that over to everybody, and they'll be in there.
Perfect. And can I ask another question, Randall?
You may, yes.
So I was having a hard time following, but current bill says that people with developmental disabilities cannot work for the polling places.
It's so what it is. It's the current statute is RS 18427, and for polling place.
Wait,
I'm sorry.
you
Okay.
talk very fast.
I apologize. I do. You're right. So
So,
basically, what it says is
or
that.
wait,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Randall.
It's okay.
Or as
It's 18, and then there's a colon, and then 427.
okay, go on.
Okay, so what it says is that a qualified voter of the state of Louisiana who is not entitled to assistance in voting and is not a candidate in the election may serve as a watcher. So if you are entitled to assistance in voting in Louisiana, you cannot serve as a polling place watcher under this statute that currently exists. And a broad range of folks with disabilities are actually eligible for assistance in voting in Louisiana. So the way this is written, it actually excludes quite a few people. Not that everybody wants to serve as a polling place watcher, but people should be allowed to if they care to.
So, what is a polling place watcher? Is that just like the people that take your ID? Like, I just call them volunteers.
These are more like private citizens who stand in a polling place to try and keep an eye on things, to try and make sure that nothing inappropriate is being done.
So it's not the people that like read. Okay, cool.
Okay. Yep.
Because that's how I'm gonna get my start into politics.
As far as I know, thank you. As far as I know, there's no prohibition currently in Louisiana law on being a volunteer at a polling place. As far as I know, but this statute refers to the folks who are private citizens who just go into polling places, who try to monitor them, hopefully, ideally, to make sure everything is done fairly.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Tori. Are there any other questions for Tori with regard to his report?
Nicole Banks has her hand raised.
Yes, Nicole, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you guys for letting me speak. So, Tori, you guys are working upon legislation and you're just going to you're looking at different bills that has language that has language that is discriminating against people with disabilities and sorry, little tongue tied, disability, I'm sorry, guys. Developmental disabilities, right?
Yes.
You guys are looking at all of those kind of legislations that have that kind of language in it, right?
Yes, actually, and not just developmental disabilities. Our organization does have a mandate to advocate for people with all types of disabilities.
Okay, so and then you guys are also, like you were saying earlier, they tried to reference it, tried to backhand you guys and put it in there, include it anyway. You guys are back doing all of those ones too, right?
Yeah, so we do try and look for that. It of course does get harder to find language in legislation when the language is incorporated by reference to an existing statute, because you can't find the language in the legislation by simply searching for it, because it's not actually in there. You have to actually, read through it and, either check every statute that's referenced in it, or have some background knowledge in law so you can spot them. So it becomes more challenging to spot bad language in a bill when it's incorporated by reference to existing statutes.
Yeah, I was kind of figuring that because I was writing down all of the bills and the statutes, and I was unaware of that. But you guys are doing awesome work, because I know what the references is, and looking at stuff and cross-referencing other statutes to make sure that everybody with people with disabilities are not being excluded because of whatever reason. I'm glad you guys are doing that kind of things. I didn't even know that they had those things that was in there targeted strictly to individuals.
Thank you. I just
never know.
I just learned about that one this year, in the last few months or so. So
yeah, I had no idea that even existed like that. I'm so glad you guys are doing that work and getting that into legislation to change that, because just because one is different, it doesn't mean we cannot work with them. We can work with everyone.
Thank you.
Rosalind has her hand raised.
Yes, Rosalind, you have the floor. Thank you, Nicole, for the question.
Yeah.
Rosalind.
What I want to find out, why can the ones with a disability cannot really vote or anything like that? How does that really work? And why at that one particular time frame? That's just one. I have another one after you answer that one. That's what I want to know, because you kind of mentioned it, and I was confused up on that.
So in the first, so I think if you're talking about the statute about watchers, polling place watchers,
yes, that's the one.
That doesn't prevent people from voting who have disabilities, but that prevents them from serving as watchers in polling places. Basically, prevents them from serving or people with certain types of disabilities as watchers who basically watch other people vote and watch how polling places are operated. Again, ideally, hopefully, to make sure they're being run fairly.
All right, but now for the voting for that one, how does that one really work? And how can anybody, could anybody watch that? Is it on news, or how can we find more information up on the statutes and all?
In terms of watching, the watching is generally done in person in the polling place, not remotely on the news.
Because they showed it on the news a couple of times, and it seemed like it was really sad that they do that. But how and why do they vote up on that to take down a statute?
How do you mean? Why would they vote in favor of a statute that has that language in it?
Yes.
I suspect that the issue is somebody who drafted the bill, just a staff bill drafter, probably included that language that was already in existing statute, just again out of just custom and practice, and with the way people draft bills. I can't speak to the motivation of the state representative who brought this bill overall for bringing it, but I suspect that she probably didn't even realize that this language was in the bill or really understand it. A lot of times when legislators introduce legislation, well, pretty much all the time, it's very standard. They have staff attorneys in the legislature who are drafting these bills for them, who are supposed to be knowledgeable about certain areas of law. And the legislators, many of them are not attorneys, and many of them, even if they are attorneys, don't have experience drafting bills. So this is why they have professional staff do it. And some legislators don't necessarily read through everything thoroughly, even when it's their own bill. And some don't necessarily understand everything or really get everything. And legislators, when they request bills, often have a goal in mind of a fairly simple objective in mind. They ask somebody else on staff to draft the bill for them, and they sort of rely on the word of the person who drafted the bill that it does what they told them to make it do. So it may not even, so that specific language likely wasn't even intentional from the bill sponsor, and she may not have been aware at all that it was in there. I mean, I didn't learn about it until, honestly, until about 10 p.m. the night before the committee met to vote on it. So I had to rush off to Baton Rouge to actually testify and talk to them about it. So the sponsor may not have really gotten that. A lot of, you'd be surprised at how often legislators really are not that sophisticated about drafting laws, reading statutes, things like that, because a lot of them just don't have that background. Some are attorneys, but some do other things like own small businesses, or they have other jobs.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Rosalind. Are there any other questions for Tori with regard to his report today?
Jill Eagley has her hand raised.
Yes, Jill, you have the floor.
Mr. Tony, I don't know if I met you, but I'm very active in Louisiana with the Didi Council, and I went through partners. But I'm a little lost and confused in what you're talking about, voting statute. Can you clarify so I can understand and language?
Sure. Okay. So one of the state reps this year introduced legislation. It was House Bill 704, if I recall correctly, off the top of my head, that would create a system of people who can monitor or watch voting at polling places in early voting locations, ostensibly with the goal of having these elections at the early voting polling places conducted fairly and honestly. And in that bill, it included language that is already in other Louisiana statute that says that people who are eligible to receive assistance while voting were not eligible to serve as the polling place. And in Louisiana, people who are eligible to receive assistance in voting at a polling place include a fairly broad range of people with disabilities. So if you have certain types of developmental disabilities or even adult onset disabilities, intellectual disabilities, you can receive assistance in voting from somebody when you go to vote in person. And this existing statute that's already in law about polling place watchers says that people who are eligible to receive assistance in voting cannot serve as a polling place watcher. Now, not a lot of people really want to serve as polling place watchers, so this probably doesn't impact directly a lot of people, but in principle, you shouldn't be excluding people for this.
And that's disturbing because I'm IDD and every year I vote, because I know in 2 years, not this November, but 2 years is the governor's reelection. I vote because I do my research and I do what I do. I don't go in there saying I can't influence anybody like that because I represent the Didi Council. So for someone to say just because you're different, well, you can't vote. It's a freedom of right.
To be clear, that's not what it said though. To be clear, it didn't say you couldn't vote. So just to be very clear, it does not say you can't vote. It says you can't serve as a polling place watcher. So which again, not everybody wants to serve as that, but it still shouldn't be in law in the first place, but also because it is in law right now, when people are drafting legislation regarding voting, they seem to be including this language in new legislation, which is not a good thing. So the solution is to just try and get this out of existing law so that one, it's just gone, and two, nobody hopefully will keep putting this into new legislation. But it does not say you can't vote. It says you can't serve as a polling place
If
watcher.
you're special need, you couldn't go at a polling place to see the results. They would just tell you you need to leave.
They wouldn't tell you need to leave, but it's specifically as serving somebody who goes into the polling place to monitor the activity there, to monitor how the poll workers are working, how voting is being conducted. So it's not that they would tell you to leave. It's who could serve as somebody who watches and monitors voting at polling places.
I see on election day, because maybe
Yeah.
someone with an ability might not know, well, I'm not trying to judge because everybody's different in their own way, but might not know the circumstance, and they might be going around and say, vote for this, vote for this. That's not allowed in the state of Louisiana, especially if you represent the Diddy Council.
It's not, and this is sort of related, but not exactly that. But again, it's language in current statute that says that people with disabilities or certain types of disabilities are not eligible to do something they should be able to do.
Okay.
So I'd like to hopefully next year work on eliminating that from state law.
Thank you, Mr. Tony. Thank you.
All right, I'm thrilled that we've had such robust discussion on such an important issue, a range of issues related to one another. But in the interest of time, we need to close up discussion on this report. So thank you, Tori, so much for the work you all are doing. It's extremely important, and we're glad to have you with us as a valuable member of the team. So thank you so much. Your report will be entered into the record, sir. And thank you all for your questions. Now, in the interest of time, let's move forward. Do we have anyone available from the Department of Education? I know Meredith was here this morning, and let me be clear that Meredith has yet to be appointed by the governor officially to the committee. She has been selected and will be appointed as the representative, but she has yet to be officially appointed at this time. So she should be appointed soon, and she will be the representative for the department in future. But as of today, she was here to listen and to learn. I don't know if she's still here and has a report or not. So Meredith, are you with us at all?
Don't believe Meredith is here. She had a conflicting meeting this afternoon.
Okay. And there's no other representative in her place? Kelly or anyone?
No, sir, it doesn't look like it.
Okay. Did they send us a report?
They sent a report for the Education and Employment Committee meeting. We can go ahead and take that report and post it.
Please do.
For everyone.
Please do. Let's do that.
Okay.
So that it'll be posted in the record as the information we have from them at this point. And I'll be reaching out to Meredith both to welcome her and to address some of the questions that we were, some of the issues that were brought up earlier with regard to education in our committee. And I'll be speaking with Mary as well. So, all right. The next one on the list would be the Office of Public Health. So, Dr. Bervecchio, are you ready to give your report to us today?
I am, thank you. So the Office of Public Health report comes from the Bureau of Family Health because the Bureau of Family Health administers Title V program, which is the Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs program for the state. And as you can see, we have a 6-page report for your review. The Bureau administers many programs, including the Universal Newborn Hearing Screening Program, the genetic screening. We also conduct direct service clinics for children and youth with special healthcare needs. These are specialty provider clinics in areas of the state that don't have provider capacity. There are financial and diagnostic eligibility requirements for those, and the information available for those services are available on the Louisiana Department of Health website. We also use Title V funds to support the Family Resource Center, which is now a statewide resource center. Historically, before COVID, it had been housed on the campus of Children's Hospital. and as part of our initiative to reach all families statewide that need resource and referral services, we now have transitioned this service center into a statewide virtual resource hub. So any family in the state that needs supportive services, the staff conducts a needs assessment and will help them identify the referrals and resources that are prioritized by that family. So right now we have a very low volume because unfortunately not many people in the state are aware. We haven't done a major marketing campaign. We are working with a few key providers in the state, and we are working with the public health unit and the Families Helping Families. So please help us disseminate information on this resource. We are there to support providers as well as families with community resources and referrals. The Bureau of Family Health also administers the Louisiana Birth Defects Monitoring Network. They conduct surveillance around Louisiana birth defects, and the Family Resource Center will be partnering with them and conducting outreach calls to families who are identified through surveillance. So this is a pilot that we're beginning probably sometime during the month of August. And so our plans are to send out postcards to families to let them know that someone from the Family Resource Center may be calling and to alert them that they can opt out of that phone call. But they will then be offered that resource and referral service opportunity. We also administer the state's lead prevention program. We have someone who monitors all lead studies done on young children in the state. They provide case management to those families that have a child with an elevated blood lead level. They also conduct a lead abatement program through the HUD grant. So in addition to that, we also have some school-based health center activities. We also administer the Nurse Family Partnership and the Parents as Teachers Home Visiting Support Network. So all of that information is available in the report. If there's any specific questions for me, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Jill
Are there any
Hano.
questions with regard to Ms. Petty's report?
Jill Hano has her hand raised.
Jill, you have the floor.
Miss Patty, I didn't get your report in my packet, and I do not believe it is linked on the website.
Well, Jill, I'll be happy to send it out to you, and I'm sure they'll be posting it to the website.
Okay, I thought I was going crazy. And can I ask my very important question to DRLA, please?
If Tori is available to answer it, yes, you may, but that's the only one I can allow.
Sure.
I was doing some research online in the 427 RS. It said from 2015. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
I'm not sure what the question was.
When did this resolution come out? What year?
This statute, I honestly don't know the legislative history of 18427. So I don't know exactly what year it was passed, but it's been around for years, is my understanding. I can't tell you
Okay,
the exact date.
okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Tori. Thank you, Jill.
No, hands.
Okay, Dr. Beravecchio, thank you again for your report. I believe it's now linked in the chat box for everyone to see the link. Are there any questions of Dr. Beravecchio regarding her report today?
Karonda Corley has her hand raised.
Yes, Ms. Corley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question for Dr. Beravecchio is, I've stated on multiple times how many families throughout our state of Louisiana has problems with actually getting pertinent information, such as the document that she just stated about the universal screening. Most of the case managers do not know this information. So what are we going to do to disseminate this information to our families in a more conducive way so that they can actually access it, but not only access it, but actually be able to read and comprehend it? Because you stated that you would use Families Help Families as well as some other entities. Many people throughout this state do not know that these entities exist. And that is a problem. And we can't say that we're going to use the website because, again, a lot of people, it has been stated multiple times that people have limited access to the internet. Right. So what is a different method of disseminating information such as that universal screening that you're considering?
Well, thank you for your question. And I have to say that is something that is a priority right now in the Bureau. Our contracts with Families Helping Families to ensure community level resource access is rather new. This is all part of that COVID-19 transition, so that we changed the way we work with Families Helping Families and are now contracting with them on a more meaningful way to support individuals in the community. And then again, our Family Resource Center was based on children at Children's Hospital, and through the course of COVID, we determined that it was best suited for the state. And so we're in the middle of expanding that service. And so just this week, we met with our communications team around building a communication plan to be able to disseminate this information out about these resources much more widely. So as part of our contracts this year with Families Helping Families, we have included part of that work is to develop a communications plan so that we can have, like you say, get the message out to those individuals in the community that would benefit from utilizing this resource. So I definitely thank you for posing that, and just be assured that we are working on it. We have a communications team at the Bureau of Family Health, and they're helping us to build a strategic communications plan on how to get this message out to individuals in the community. And so again, with Families Helping Families, we're also working toward that same end to make sure that individuals know that they can reach out to Families Helping Families for these types of resource support needs.
In the chat, Charlie Michelle said, working with Dr. Beravecchio this past year has been a great experience, and our Families Helping Families centers are doing outreach to pediatricians, physicians, hospitals, and school districts to facilitate a better dissemination of this information. Our plans call for growing these outreach efforts as well.
Thank you, Charlie, for that comment. And thank you, Dr. Beravecchio, for your work. Are there any other questions of Dr. Beravecchio today? regarding her report? Are there any questions for Dr. Bervecchio? Are there any comments regarding the report?
Karonda Corley says, I strongly encourage this topic to be referred to the DEI committee so they can aid.
So noted. Thank you, Ms. Corley. Okay, are there any other questions for Dr. Bervecchio with regard to her report today? Hearing none, thank you, Doctor, and your report will be entered into the record.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Okay, and now we move on to the report for the Governor's Office of Elderly Affairs, which I believe is our brand new member, Ms. Crane. Is that correct? Am I right about that?
That is correct. It is Ms. Crane.
Okay. So is Ms. Crane available to give her report today? Ms. Crane, are you with us today?
I don't believe.
I don't see
She was
her.
with us earlier, but I don't think she rejoined us after lunch. So did they give us a report
She did.
to
And
present?
it is linked.
Okay, then let's make sure we enter it into the record so folks have a chance to review it if they would like. Okay, and so the next report to be given would be from the Office of Aging and Adult Services.
Hi, Randall. This is Julie. Dr. Lopez had to hop off for another meeting, but he asked if I would present his report for the record and take back any questions folks had for the Office of Aging and Adult Services. If that's okay, you can pull up his report and I'll hit some of the high points.
Thank you, Julie, for giving us that report.
So there we go. The Office of Aging and Adult Services report is pulled up. Their report includes the total number of people in the Office of Aging and Adult Services waiver and state plan services, and that's the total current recipients that they have. They do still have a waiting list or a registry for OAAS services. So their report also provides you with information on the number of people that are on the waiting list for the Community Choices waiver, and then provides some additional data on the other programs within OAAS. And then the Adult Protective Services are under the Office of Aging and Adult Services. So on the second page of their report, they provide you with information and breakdown related to allegations that have been called in to Adult Protective Services last fiscal year, and then up to the third quarter of this fiscal year. So I don't know that I can answer them, but if anybody has questions, I can do my best, or I can take them back to Dr. Lopez and his team in OAAS and make sure we get answers to you guys.
Thank you for that, Julie. And so are there any questions with regard to the data presented in the report for Julie to take back to the team at the department?
Rosalind has her hand raised.
Yes, Rosalind.
All right. For what I am seeing, and you have like FY and Q1 and Q3 and FY again for 2020 and 20 and 21. Now, what is the difference between 20 and 20 and 20 and 21 with the numbers in that?
So FY stands for fiscal year. And I can ask them to spell that all out on the report. I know we have, we try not to use acronyms. So I'll give them that feedback and ask them if they can do that. But FY stands for fiscal year 2020. And so here in Louisiana, fiscal year 2020 ran from July 1 of 2019 to June 30th of 2020. So that is a full year's report for 2020. And then fiscal year 21 ran from July the 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. And then the Q1 through Q3 means that that's a report for quarter one, which would be July, August, September, quarter two, October, November, December, and then quarter three, which was January, February, March. So in the next report that they give you, it will have all of them through the whole year. So the second table is only 9 months, where the table above it is for a whole 12 months, a whole year time frame. Does that answer your question, Rosalind?
All right, with the ages you have to be like what, from previous serving to adult age from 18 to 59. So how can they be served from that age bracket from 18 to 59?
Sure. So we have 3 different what we call protection agencies, or places where you can report abuse and neglect that happens. And the Adult Protective Services, if you suspect that abuse or neglect is happening for someone who's aged 18 to 59, then you report it to Adult Protective Services. And that agency is under our Office of Aging and Adult Services. If you suspect that abuse or neglect may be happening to someone over the age of 59, that's reported to what we call Elderly Protective Services, and that's under the Governor's Office of Elderly Affairs. And if you suspect that abuse or neglect is happening to someone under the age of 18, that's reported to Child Protective Services. And Child Protective Services is under our Department of Children and Family Services.
Okay, Rosalind, thank you for your questions. Thank you, Julie, for your answers. Are there any other questions for Julie about the report? Hearing none, thank you, Julie, for that, and the report will be entered into the record. Thank you. And so our next report to be given will be from the Bureau of Health Services Financing, which is Medicaid. So Jen Katzman, are you available and ready to give your report to us this afternoon?
Yes, sir. Hi, Randall. I'm here. Hi, everybody. Good to talk to you. My report is, it should be there. Thanks. Perfect. So I did want to supply just a little update on some initiatives that we've been undertaking in partnership with our program offices, the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities, the Office of Aging and Adult Services, and our Office of Behavioral Health. There was passage of the American Rescue Plan Act this year, and within the provisions of that federal legislation, there's an opportunity for states to obtain some additional federal funding for home and community-based services. And so what it allows us to do is present to our federal partners, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or we call that CMS, and it allows us to tell CMS the level of our current home and community-based expenditures for this year from April 1st, 2021 through March 31st of 2022. And based on that level of expenditure that we have, we get to draw down or get additional federal funding of 10%. So we project that level of funding that we are estimating to spend this upcoming year will allow us to draw down a good amount of federal funding that we can use to enhance and grow our home and community-based services. But there are requirements around it, as always. There's stipulations. It can't be used to replace or supplant any existing services. It also the Fed, the CMS is really looking closely at what we're going to be using it for to ensure that that we have a sustainability plan. So they're looking at whether it's a one-time expenditure or if it's recurring. And what we were required to do is submit an initial spending plan to CMS on July 12th. And that plan detailed what we thought we could use that federal funding to pay for and reinvest in our home and community-based services in a way that would further the program. And we're allowed to spend those funds for 2 more years, so through 2024. And that's in my report there if you need to find those dates. But you only get the funding once. So it's not that you get recurring funding each year. It's once you draw down the funds, you get to spend it for up to 2 to 3 years through 2024. And so what we've been careful to do is, since our initial spending plan was due to CMS so quickly, we wanted to make sure that we built in time to discuss further with our stakeholders and our legislators, because we have some hesitancy around obligating our legislature in the future around recurring expenditures if they're not going to be able to fund those. We hate to start something and stop it and take it away if it can't be funded ongoing. And so we focused our initial spending plan on one-time expenditures that could really help bolster the program, and also on some options that we listed out in our cover letter, some options that we would like to revisit and discuss with our stakeholders and legislature for recurring expenditures. So that's the latest update on some big initiatives that could be coming out of the department around home and community-based spending. In addition, I wanted to provide an update on our Act 421 Children's Medicaid Option, which is our TEFRA-like program. So as you know, our application has been pending with CMS for almost a year now. We had a call with them on Tuesday. We have regular calls with them, but our latest call was on Tuesday. And I had hoped that I would have better news, that we would be more optimistic for a close approval, so that we could launch in October at the start of the next quarter. But it would appear that CMS still is working through some policy questions with their leadership. And they did tell us that they did not foresee they could meet any deadlines for us to launch by October, and still have our registration period and appropriate communications and public notice. So I don't think that October is going to happen at this point, but if that changes, I'll be sure to let all of our stakeholder groups and the DD Council know. We are looking at alternative options given the continued delays. And that includes pursuing it through our state plan as an actual TEFRA state plan amendment. However, that is contingent on having funding available through the American Rescue Plan, which is what I was just speaking to on those initiatives that we might be able to get additional federal funding for. So our spending plan has to be approved by CMS in order for us to be able to expand into a state plan option. So we're working closely with CMS about that. We have a meeting with them to discuss it next week. And so I'm hoping I'll have more updates to come. So the rest of the report is about our programs, including permanent supportive housing and money follows the person. A little, numerical and updates on self-direction and electronic visit verification. I include these every quarter as updates on where we are and the progress and the number of people served. So I'm not going to touch on each one of those. The information is there if anyone needs to read it. Also behavioral health and how many participants in CSOC and our behavioral health network adequacy, and then further down for applied behavioral analysis and our expenditures there. So again, I include those in every quarterly report. So if you want to see those numbers, it's available. And if you have any questions, I am here to answer them, I hope. That's all I have, Randy.
Your hand raised.
Thank you, Jen, for the information today. Are there any questions of Jen with regard to her report?
Rosalind has her hand raised.
Yes, Rosalind.
What I want to know is if you could go back in that on September 23rd of 2020, in that with I think with the initials with CMS.
Uh-huh.
What I want to know with that, with the initials, what are they again?
Sure. So CMS stands for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah, there we
Services.
go, right here. Wait a minute, it's right here. No, go back up.
Are there any other questions for Jen with regard to her report?
It's right there on the screen if you need it, Rosalind, where it says Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services with CMS in parentheses right behind it.
Yeah, because with that, with me, with the services that I got with Social, is that considered with Social Security and SSI? How does that work? That's what I want to know.
Sure. So in Medicaid, if you qualify for supplemental security income, which is SSI, you automatically qualify for Medicaid. So yes, you get Medicaid coverage if you have SSI.
I have both of them. That's why I'm asking about that, because would they ever, with the numbers, would they ever change or?
They could, as far as qualifying for those programs, they could change. It's somewhat income based, and it's also disability based. But when they update those, if they change those thresholds, those income requirements, they publish that, and I think they do it every year. I know that
covers
Medicaid,
both of my questions.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions for Jen with regard to her report today? Other questions or comments for Jen with regard to her report? Okay, thank you, Jen. Thank you for the work y'all do.
Thank you.
Your report will be entered into the record.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, and so next on our agenda to be heard from today is the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs. So Bambi, you have the floor.
Amy, did you have something you needed to say?
Yeah, there was a comment in the chat that I believe goes back to the report from the Office of Aging and Adult Services.
Okay. We read that real
The
quick.
question from Ms. Corley is, can they provide a table that reflects the cases that present with multiple allegations in comparison to the tables reflected now, including a breakdown by race, ethnicity, English language learners, nonverbal/assisted technology users, region, etc.
That question is noted. We can pass it on to the department. I don't believe their representative is here, are they?
No, sir.
I'll make sure I bring that back.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. And Bambi, you have the floor.
Hi, so I'm not gonna recap the legislative session. It's on the report, and I know we've had a lot of discussion about that, but just wanted to let you guys know, big thing that's happening next week is our GOTA conference. Our annual conference is virtual. It will be Monday through Thursday of next week. We have 19 sessions. Amy, can you click on where the last sentence where it says click here for the conference schedule? And so I just want people to be able to see that the schedule. It's really a robust schedule. I have to really thank my staff for really helping to lead this. This is a big conference and there's only 4 of us. And I just want to thank Lillian for her leadership in several of these sessions. You can see that they're really focused on, if you want to just scroll down, Amy, as I'm talking, they're really focused a lot on having people with disabilities as the presenters or panelists. We also have professionals, but we really, I find we have more of a focus this year on having those panels with people with disabilities, our youth, as well as adults with disabilities, and also many of the other sessions that we have maybe that are recurring each year just to give updates. And so you register at the link, which is at the top, that tinyurl.com/GOTA 2021. And you register once and you can pick and choose what sessions you want to attend. I also have to thank all of our presenters. We do not, none of our presenters get paid. This conference is really a great conference because the cost is really minimal. Because we have so many partners that are willing to share their knowledge and be a part of the conference. The conference will have ASL interpreters and captioning throughout the conference. So if you have not registered yet, please register. We have over 600 people registered so far. So we're really excited about it and very stressed and nervous about having a conference with 600 people registered. So any questions about, well, I guess I'll finish my report and then people can ask questions after. Also in the report, just some important things to note for the Governor's Advisory Council on Disability Affairs. There's a link if anyone is interested in applying. We have a few seats that are vacant. Please apply after our conference in August. We'll go with our, get with our executive committee and make selections for recommendations for that council. The Statewide Independent Living Council will be moving out of the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs. It is a good thing. It's a partnership. It was a goal that we had for the, and the Independent Living Council had, was to become independent outside of a government body. And so Jessica Lewis, who is their executive director, she actually accepted another job. Jamar Ennis is, who is our, was our assistant director for GOTA. Many of you know Jamar. He is assuming the role of executive director for the few months until Silk transitions out. And Silk is now looking for a new executive director. Jamie Duplichin, which many of you know, Jamie Duplichin is the chairperson, and you can reach out to Jamie if you're interested in applying for that position. I really think that position is a great opportunity for someone with advocacy, has an heart for advocacy. The independent living movement is what really created our, ADA, and so much in regards to advocacy for people with disabilities. So I feel like a good leader could really help that council move forward in the way that really helps our state. And then lastly, the State as a Model Employer Task Force has been working on some videos to promote our annual survey that we do with our state employees. And so, as you can see in the report, the governor, lieutenant governor, many of our secretaries have recorded videos that will be targeted towards our state employees to take the survey. And then those videos will also be used later just to be able to promote employment for people with disability in state government. And so that's been a great partnership that we've had with XP Synergy Companies, which most of you will recognize the name of Opportunity Now, but their production company has been doing these videos just on a volunteer basis. And so look for that, and we'll be sharing that with you soon. And I see that Jamie Duplichin has shared her email address in the chat for people who are interested in getting information about that executive director position for the statewide Independent Living Council. And that's all that I have. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Bambi, and thank you for the important work y'all are doing. And good luck with your conference. I hope that many of us can attend. Are there any questions for Bambi with regard to her report today? Okay, hearing none, are there any comments? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Bambi. Your report will be entered into the record.
Jill Hano has her hand raised.
I'm sorry. Jill, you have the floor.
No, my bad, but Bambi, did you say something? One of y'all's organization is moving into its own entity?
Yes, the statewide. So we have 4 councils in our office, and they're listed here: the Governor's Advisory Council on Disability Affairs, the Statewide Independent Living Council, the State Interagency Coordinating Council for Early Steps, and the State as a Model Employer Task Force. Those are 4 councils that are operated in our office. And the Statewide Independent Living Council is transitioning to being outside of the governor's office. In the interim, the council will be operating through New Horizons Independent Living Center, where that they'll be the fiscal agent, and the long-term plan, which hopefully will be in a year or so, is that Silk is a 501c3, and it's an independent body. It's still going to get the funding that it gets and have all the laws and stuff that govern independent living councils in every state. But it will be operating autonomously outside of any other entity. And just so you know, some of our council members are also on Silk, Rashad Bristow and Stephen Wynn. And I think those are the only 2 that are DD council members who are also Silk members.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Bambi with regard to her report? Hearing none, thank you, Bambi. Your report will be entered into the record. And again, thank you for all the work you're doing. All right, our final report for today is from the Office of Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. And Julie,
You
this
guys
is your
saved the
information.
longest report for last, right, Randall? So, hello again. I'm not going to read our 8-page report to everybody. I'm happy to take any questions you guys have about the report. The main thing I want to do in the little time that we have left is just highlight 2 major things that we have going on that I know have a lot of interest to the council. Some of them we've talked about in the committee meetings, but we actually had some movement on a couple of things and why I had to kind of sign off this morning for a little bit. The 2 main activities, one is the rate increase for the direct support workers, which we kind of referenced a couple of times, but House Bill 1 included utilizing about $16 million out of the New Opportunities Waiver Fund So that's the state portion. When you add the federal portion, it's a total of about $53 million. You know, money that's in the Now Fund can only be used for home and community-based waivers that are operated through our Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. So the rate increases will only be for our OCDD waivers. And what we did was we took the amount of money that we had available, the 16 million. We are assuming that we won't be able to start the rate increases until October 1 because we will have to do rulemaking. And so for the 9 months, for October 1 through June the 30th, we are anticipating that we'll be able to give a $2.50 per hour rate increase for our IDD waivers. We've heard from the DD Council and legislators. They felt it was important that the majority of that money goes to the direct support workers. But through some conversations we've had, there is an understanding that there are some other associated costs that also have to be considered. And so this morning in Joint Legislative Committee on Budget, they worked to do some interpretive language. And that motion that did pass said that the department would have rulemaking authority to set a direct care wage floor based on that $2.50 per hour increase. The testimony from a lot of the legislators said that they're, you know, expected that the majority of this money goes to the workers. So we will, we are awaiting, I'm awaiting, and I don't know yet what that final amount will be, but what the department will do is say that we are giving $2.50 per hour increase. And with this $2.50 an hour increase, there is an expectation that direct support workers be paid a minimum of a certain wage. And we will put that in rule. And then the rule will also say that that is subject to being audited by the department. So our office will go at some point during the year and conduct an audit where we look at the payroll records of the providers to make sure that they are paying all workers whatever that wage floor is that we get set. And then the rule will also have some penalties so that if workers, I mean, if providers aren't paying that, then there will be a penalty that they will incur for not following that direct care floor. I've also gotten some questions about whether that applies to folks in self-direction, and it does. What it will do is that, you know, that $2.50 increase applies as well to self-direction. And so a portion of that will then be added so that people who utilize self-direction will be able to pay their workers an additional amount of money as well. And it'll work the same in self-direction on both sides. So there will be additional money available so that you can pay your worker more, but there will also be the expectation for those in self-direction that those in self-direction pay their workers at least that minimum wage rate that's established by the department as well. So once we have that final decision, we will put all of that into what we call a rule. And then we have to publish our rule through the Louisiana Registry for 30 days. And it is then people are able to make public comment on what the department puts out there as rule. But what you can expect to see is a direct care floor, requirement for an audit, and then the penalties for people who do not in fact pay the direct care workers that floor. We also have gotten questions. This does not apply to home and community-based waiver services that are provided through the Office of Aging and Adult Services. And there's been concern, you know, because a lot of the workers are the same. And the legislators have asked the department to look for ways that we might give them a rate increase as well. And I know we'll also be working with the legislators, you know, to help find any additional money that we can to do that. It also does not include an increase for our intermediate care facilities or for our support coordination services. And I know that we've heard, concern from folks about that. Again, those are all outside of what we would be able to use the New Opportunities Waiver Fund for. So the other big activity that I just want to share with you guys, and we talked about this in the Self-Inclusion and Determination Committee yesterday, and Brenton or DD Council sent out to all council members today. I saw a link so that people can know where to go to find, but we have our New Opportunities Waiver is out for public comment. It posted yesterday, and it'll be open for 30 days for public comment. The emails that was sent tells you where you can go to send your comments, ocdd-hcbs@la.gov. And we have gotten questions, what happens with those comments? So when we submit our waiver application, every 5 years, we have to start kind of from scratch and do our waiver application over again. In between those 5 years, if we want to make changes, we do a waiver amendment. So you'll hear us say waiver amendment and waiver application. The New Opportunities Waiver is up for its 5-year renewal in January. So this is a kind of the biggie where we have to take a look at and modify everything. And so it is out there again for public comment. We did, had some listening sessions last DD Council meeting. We talked about the public health emergency and the fact that our exceptions would be able to be in place until 6 months after the public health emergency, which, as you know, the public health emergency in July was just continued for another 90 days. And the Biden administration has said that they plan to, we believe that they will likely continue the public health emergency at least through December of 2021. So what that means for the waiver exceptions is that they will, if the public health emergency is in place until December, we'll be able to have all these exceptions in place until till this time next year, July of 2022. But we are planning and trying to include some changes as we go along. I couldn't hear what you said. Sorry, my watch started talking to me. Trying to include some of those. And so and again, I know we're short on time, so I won't spend a lot of time other than to just share a couple of the big major changes that you'll see in our New Opportunities Waiver application. Previously, before COVID, there was a rule that if you were a family member living in the same home as a person, that you could not be a paid caregiver. Well, we no longer have that restriction in place. So family members who are not legally responsible relatives will be able to be paid caregivers up to 40 hours a week. Because CMS, and if you look at the application, you might notice that they require us to say, do you allow family members to be paid caregivers? Do you allow legally responsible relatives to be paid caregivers? And do you allow legal guardians to be paid caregivers? If we do allow that in our waivers, then there's certain extra steps and things that you have to be able to show. Because as a legally responsible relative, there are some things that you do that you're not paid for to help someone. So CMS says you have to show, where does ordinary care stop and extraordinary care begin? And that's really difficult to show. And so because of that, most states don't allow legally responsible relatives to be paid caregivers, although COVID has us all thinking about that. And all states are hearing from families that it's been very helpful to have family members be paid caregivers. So what we have in the New Opportunities Waiver application, what you'll see now, is a provision to have legally responsible relatives be able to be paid caregivers under the monitored in-home caregiving. That is a per diem. So there's just one amount that you get with the idea that you're, helping throughout the day. And there may be some things that are ordinary care, some things that are extraordinary care. And we felt like that was an easier bridge than trying to justify when folks are on the clock and off the clock. And then we would have to do even more in the plan of care to justify what was extraordinary. So again, you guys can comment on that, and if you disagree or if you think alternatively, but that was our plan and what we have in the waiver application now. You'll also see changes, just so you know, because the last time we did our new opportunities waiver application was 5 years ago, it still had a lot in the application about a first come, first serve. So we had to update all the language to the new system we have about prioritization and added information about our sun screenings and whatnot. And then finally, we did have to do a lot of changes around critical incidents. OCDD was engaged in an audit by the Office of the Inspector General, who's trying to go through all 50 states, and their focus of this particular audit was on critical incidents. What they did was they pulled Medicaid claims data for when a person is in the emergency room or the hospital, and then they bumped that against reports from our critical incident report system. And they said that if somebody's in the emergency room or the hospital, there should be a critical incident. Well, there were a lot of times when we didn't have that. And when we researched it, we found that it may be that a person's not getting 24-hour support. And, it might have been that they went to the hospital while with the family and whatnot. So we've made some changes, and we're going to be doing some education and upcoming work with family members to help them understand that we're still going to need a report anytime somebody goes to the emergency room or the hospital, because CMS and the federal regulations are that we need to know about that, and that the team that supports the person needs to know about it and give considerations to why they went into the emergency room or the hospital, what are some additional supports or actions that they may need, and it needs to be considered in the overall plan of care. And so you'll see some language changes there about critical incidents, and that's just kind of a quick summary of our major changes. Again, you can send comments or concerns to our OCDD-HCBS@la.gov. And what we are required to do is to take all of the public comment that we receive. And when we submit our application, we have to tell CMS what the public comment is that we received, what our response is, what did we consider. And so all of the comments we receive will be submitted to CMS with our application. Sorry, I keep saying one more thing. One more thing. If we get substantial comment back and we decide that we will make changes to our waiver, then they call it substantive changes. So if we make substantive changes based on the public comment we receive, we will post it again for another 30 days. And I'll make sure that we notify the DD Council staff. So if in fact we do make changes and repost it, they can send another alert out to you guys letting you know that we've now reposted it, and folks can have an opportunity to do the same thing in that 30-day period, submit public comment to the waiver application. So now that really was the last thing, and I'll stop and take questions.
Thank you, Julie, for your report. Are there any questions for Julie regarding her report today?
Jill Eagley has her hand raised.
Yes, Jill, you have the floor.
It's Julie Hagan. On a professional stand with the Office of CDD, this is something negative, but slightly in trouble with what's going on with everything with this whole thing with the variant. I mean, are they still? I'm just concerned about things right now. I get a lot of updates with Stephen Sauer, but with the whole big, with the services and the rates, and also during this COVID, would anybody who gets services from the state get a higher increase with the government with their SSI?
You were kind of breaking in and out, Jill, but I think I heard you just, so the rate increase that I mentioned, that $2.50 rate increase, is also in place for the day program and vocational providers in addition to the in-home providers. So there is a rate increase on the horizon for them. I can't answer any questions about SSI. I just don't know the answer to that. And then to your comment on the Delta variant, I think we're all very concerned about what's happening now with the number of cases that are going up. Please help us spread the word about vaccination. If you're watching what's going on, increasing our rates of vaccination in Louisiana is really one of the only ways we're going to really be able to tackle this. And you can see that folks who are vaccinated, and I know a lot of folks are still concerned. There are people who are vaccinated who are coming back positive with the Delta variant, but they do have evidence that's showing that it's a much, less case than those who are not vaccinated. The severity of the symptoms are less. We are closely watching it. As of right now, there's not anything that's changed for like our day programs, but we are watching it. We're watching guidance from the CDC and working with our Office of Public Health in the epidemiology section to see, are there some things that we might need to do different? Are there things we might need to go back to in our services? But as of right now, as I speak today, could change an hour from now, but as I speak today, there's no different, requirements or regulations that are in place right now.
They still have the day hab and the virtual service, correct?
That's correct. And the virtual service is one that we'll have that in place now, even after COVID. So that's one of the things that we're looking at post-COVID, continuing small groups and the virtual visits for people who don't want to go back to a facility where there's a lot of people. Even after we're past the epidemic, we heard people say they may not want that. So we're trying to give other options that still get you out of the house, but maybe some different options. Oh, you're on mute, Jill.
I am vaccinated and I never got into contact with COVID or anything. And I wear my mask at all times. I know that the state has to follow the Arcagino, wear your mask. Now, when you eat, take your mask and put it back on. And I get that I have to remind people, wear your mask. They don't want a lot of people because they have to catch a hold of this variant. But everybody's like, Miss, it's so, because everybody's just mentally drained out, Miss Julie, because it's like, what can we do? I'm hoping before we get a new governor, all of this is set aside. I'm mentally drained out, but all I can do is slowly do stuff and give a break and kind of wait it out. I'm really mentally drained out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Jill. Are there any other questions for Julie with regard to her report?
Bambi Polizzola has her hand raised.
Yes, Bambi, you have the floor.
Julie, whenever you say legally responsible, I know that probably includes like tutorship, guardianship, interdiction, that type of thing, but does that include the person who is the authorized representative?
Well, I'm heading out.
I'm not sure about authorized representative. I know it's like the parent of a child.
I'm heading out and
okay,
I'll see y'all in
thank you.
October. I hope everybody gets their whatever. Be careful with the virus.
Spouse, the parent of a child, not an adult but a child, and the legal guardian. I don't know about authorized representative. I know our legal counsel team is really doing a lot of exploring, because when you look at what CMS says, it says that the state should have a statute, and that each state should have a statute that defines what legally responsible relative is. And on a quick search, none of us have been able to find that. So that I'll circle back with them specifically on the authorized rep.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Bambi. Are there any other questions for Julie with regard to her report today?
Nicole Banks has her hand raised.
Nicole, you have the floor.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm going to try to be as quick as possible because of time restraints, and try to stay focused because I had a lot of interruptions on my questioning. So, Ms. Julie, I was hearing you saying that you guys are restructuring and reprioritizing. Is this, I know that you were talking about the individual served, correct? Up in your report, you were talking about the individual served when you guys say you have to reprioritize because they had some voting or some spending.
I'm trying to see where in my report.
I know. Can you pull it up right quick for me, and I'll be able to show you. Because I just see everybody right now, and y'all had pulled it off the screen before I could write everything down, and I was like, oh no. Okay, Amy, if you can go down a little bit, some more, a little bit more. I think it's like almost all the way down at the end when she was talking. It had her reports down. Flexibility, home-based waivers. Some more. I think it was the question where you guys were doing the Medicaid claims, and it was like the hospital version, and it wasn't matching, and you guys had to reprioritize in how you guys had looked at stuff. And you said because some things were counted as wasn't stayed overnight, or maybe it was just something that they went to the hospital for something and they only would stay for a couple of hours, and you guys were getting the information and the data upon that. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Nicole. I'm not.
You were telling us, it was closer to the end, and you were telling us about how you guys got audited. And
the Office of Inspector General. Yes. So I'm sorry, ask me the question.
I'm gonna try to ask it where you could understand it, because I had to see it again. Okay.
You got it outside.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, guys. Okay, in regards to the audit, they said that you guys, it wasn't matching up to where the hospital claims that you had and the data wasn't matching up. That's what you were saying, correct? So you guys had to go back over this stuff, and new data was formed, or you guys just operate off this existing data? Because when you're being audited, they're going into detail in how these things are being done and how this the money and stuff is being spent on these claims and that kind of stuff. So I'm guessing that is why they did the audit, correct?
No, they did the audit simply. The purpose of the audit was not this time. I know what you're saying. Usually an audit is tied to money. Right. This time the audit is tied to how the state handles critical incidents and handles reporting of critical incidents. And the premise behind it is they feel like if somebody ends up having to go to the emergency room or the hospital, that's a significant event in their life that should be discussed by the person's interdisciplinary team in consideration given, do we need to make changes to the plan of care or whatnot? And so it wasn't about the money that was paid out. It was about the fact that they saw that there were times when people were in the emergency room or in the hospital. And then normally when that happens, that's supposed to be reported to the support coordinator in waiver, who then does a critical incident. And so what they found is that there were times people were in the hospital and it wasn't filed as a critical incident. If it's not filed as a critical incident, it means the support team didn't consider it. And they feel that it's important that the support team consider those things and any changes that might be needed, or follow up with different doctors and things like that.
So you guys are past with that in reference to the information that they were collecting upon the audit, right? You guys are good with the data that they were seeking out to get?
We are done with the audit. We had to develop a corrective action plan. And part of that corrective action plan, we included in the new opportunities waiver. So you'll see it in the quality section. Which is section, you'll see most of it in section G in the new opportunities waiver. And there's just some language changes that we had to make about how we respond to critical incidents. And that was a result of the audit. And then families of people that are in waiver, you may be in the upcoming months, you're likely to be hearing from your support coordinators. We're going to have to be doing some discussion with families and whatnot to let you guys know that it's important and we're being judged on, did we fill that out as a critical incident and discuss it as a team? So there may be times when they're not receiving, support hours. So we're just going to need the family help us, keep us informed of that as we have team meetings and support team meetings.
Okay, and this is for the waiver that you guys are trying to get now, right? You're trying to get this passed for the 5 years again, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I thought it was a part of it. That was a part of my other question too. So you've answered both of it. I don't have to even ask the other one because that was a part of the waiver thing. That's why I just needed clarification. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Are there any other questions for Julie with regard to her report today?
3 more people have their hand raised. Jill Hano.
Okay, Jill Hano, you have the floor.
What page and what initiative were you talking about changes to incident reporting, Miss Julie?
I don't think it's in here. I was just summarizing what changed with the new opportunities waiver. That came after we submitted our report.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Julie. Okay, who's the next hand we had raised?
Brenda Kose.
Okay, Brenda, you have the floor. Brenda, you have the floor. She may be having audio difficulties. Brenda, are you there? Okay, who is the next hand raised, Amy?
Liz Gary.
Okay, Liz, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I was waiting for them to unmute me. Thank you, Randall. Julie, I just had a couple quick questions. The first one is I just want to confirm, obviously, I know this answer, but I want to confirm it for everybody. When the Appendix K extension goes another 90 days, and that means it would extend instead of January, it would extend into March, that all of the Appendix K extension remain the same, meaning that people who were watching their children in the home can still do it. The 20 extra hours for Children's Choice is still in effect. Is that correct? Just confirming that for others.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. The other question I have is you kept referring to, I have not been able to read the 200 pages of the now renewal. Trust me, I will. But my question is, my question is that you keep referring to it as the now renewal. So are we no longer calling it the most appropriate, or have we not started with that? Or is it technically going to be the changed name that we had talked about for years up until this point?
So we haven't been able to consolidate the 4 waivers yet. So we still do have the new opportunity. We still have 4 different applications for the 4 different waivers: new opportunities, supports, Children's Choice, and the residential options waiver. So it still is called the new opportunities waiver. When we talk a lot about a lot of the data that we show now and a lot of the discussion that we have, we use most appropriate waiver, but when we use most appropriate waiver, it's still referring to all 4 of those with CMS. We still have a long-term goal of consolidating those waivers. We've had there's a lot of reasons why we haven't been able to make progress in that. So what we're trying to do, for example, one of the things you'll see in the new opportunities waiver is that we now have the supports waiver and the new opportunities waiver used to have different services and different definitions for employment and day program and things like that. Those will now align, or they're close to it. There's still a few differences of things we have to change in the supports waiver. So we also now have the ability to share across waivers. We continued that. So we're trying to, even though we still have 4 separate ones, we're trying to make the services as consistent as we can across all of them, so that ultimately when we do get to the consolidated waiver, it won't be such a massive change as what we would have been looking at before when we had things so very different in all of the waivers. But when we say most appropriate waiver, it is referring to all 4 of those. And for now, we still have to go with the new opportunities waiver. But again, long-term, we're still working on that. And actually that's sort of where our discussions are going now. When is the appropriate time for us to get back on track with that?
Okay. With that being said, and like I said, I haven't read it yet, but as we had deep conversations in the past about considering changing from units to dollars so that it wouldn't you wouldn't lose it every quarter, and you would have the potential possibly to pay overtime, or you wouldn't have to worry about the actual unit. For a long time, we talked about doing it as a dollar amount instead of a unit amount, because people lose their units after a quarter if they didn't use it. And also there was the issue of the nighttime and daytime hours having to convert. Is that in this waiver, or did that not get put in with hours instead of units for the now?
I don't think it got put in, but I'll have to make sure of that.
Okay. Okay, because I know that was a big issue concerning people losing their, not having enough in one time, and then every time they do an IFD or an IFN, they had to call their caseworker to change it or stuff like that. And then if they had people who were sharing supports across 2 or 3 people, if they had put all their money in their 2 or 3 people, then they lost that money if they weren't able to use it. So I know we talked about how it wasn't the best use of people getting through with what they needed for that.
Okay. And Liz, I may call you offline because let me talk with my folks too. And I may call you offline because that one's just, for some reason, that's not ringing a bell in my mind. But
yeah, this has been on and off for about 4 to 6 years. We talked about this when the next renewal would come, what it would look like. And so that was one of the things. Okay, and the last thing, and then I'll shut it down, is I'm just curious, and I guess I'm confused as to why the provider rate was $2.50 when the rate that was asked through the DD Council was $2. And I guess on the fact sheet, it always said $2, and now it's $2.50. So I must have missed that along the way.
Sure. So the reason it went to $2.50, during the course of the legislative session, and actually in JLCB, Representative Edmonds testified to this, so I'm not as uncomfortable saying it because he and Representative Bacala admitted to it. Someone asked them, where did the $16 an hour come from? And was that tied to a specific rate like the $2 an hour ask? So the DD Council had the $2 an hour ask, and there was a fiscal note or impact tied to it. What happened was the legislators received from someone a report that there was an availability of $16 million in the New Opportunities Waiver Fund to use. So it wasn't necessarily tied to a specific budget request. It was, oh, look, here's $16 million that we can use. Originally, they also didn't understand that because it came from the NOW Fund, it couldn't be used for ICFs or OAAS. So initially, House Bill 1 actually said $16 million from the NOW Fund for OAAS waivers, OCDD waivers, ICFs, and support coordination. And we had to go back and tell them that by statute, you can't use it for all those things, just your DD waiver services. And so they changed it. And so the $2.50 came because we took the amount that they gave us and we looked at what the utilization was last year. And we looked at what number would we back into to be able to use all of the 16 million that they gave us. And that translated to a $2.50 increase based on the total amount that they gave us. Does that make sense?
Yes. So that's for this year. Does that mean it moves forward to next year the same? And the reason I'm asking, it's twofold, because if you move forward and give $1.25 a raise to your providers, and I'm talking even self-direction, if people start paying more, then what happens if they don't get as much money in next fiscal year and they've already do it? They would have to take the money back from those people?
Yeah, so yes, but I know that's a difficult thing, you know, to be able to do. One of the things that we also discussed, and again, in a meeting, at this point, I don't remember when it was, but within the last few days, the undersecretary of the department made a commitment to include in our budget request the full year's funding next fiscal year. Now, of course, that is all dependent on going through the commissioner and the executive budget process, but she made a commitment from the department that we would put they call it the annualized cost. So the full year, the full 12 months cost of that $2.50 an hour increase that we would put in our base budget request for next year. So again, we'll have to ask for that additional SGF if it's not coming from the NOW fund, but we will include it in the department's executive budget request for next year, which we're in the process of preparing now.
Okay,
So
thank you,
that it
Julie.
can
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Julie with regard to her report today? And y'all please be
Still
aware
has-
we are over time.
Brenda still has her hand raised.
Questions for Julie?
Brenda still has her hand raised.
Yes, Brenda, are you there? Brenda, if you're there, you have the floor. Okay. Are there any other questions for Julie? Any comments? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much, Julie. Thank you for all the work you and your team do, and your reports will be entered into the record. We don't need the break because we're at the end of our meeting today, so I will call at this point for any public comment we may have. Again, this is time for any public comment we may have.
Stephen has his hand raised.
Yes, Stephen, you have the floor, sir.
Hello again. Yeah, I just wanted to send my appreciation and gratitude to my fellow council members, council staff, and the DD community. As many of you know, this will be more than likely be my last council meeting as a council member. So it's been one heck of a ride, and it's been an amazing 4 years. And I appreciate all of the support that I've gotten over the years and the friendships that I've built in this community. I just wanted to leave you all with a parting message. We are better together. Let's continue to work together and to build a community that we can all be proud of. So with that being said, I sign off. Thank you.
And Stephen, I want to thank you. I want to echo your statement there. We are better and stronger together. And I want to thank you for agreeing to serve as member at large when I appointed you for the better part of this term. And I thank you so much for that acceptance, and being able to work with you was a pleasure. And thank you so much, sir. Are there any other public comments?
Absolutely.
No other public comments. Are there any announcements to be made? Staff, do we have any announcements to make?
The only announcement that I have is we are expecting that there will be some reallotment of DDC funds due to some money being available from the Puerto Rico Disabilities Council. So
Yes.
we will be informed about what our allotment will be, and it probably will be late August or September before we hear anything.
Okay, well, we'll certainly keep our eye out for that. And we'll let everyone know as soon as we know what that number is. Thank you for that. If there are no other announcements, I just want to take a very quick moment to thank you all again. It's been an honor and a pleasure to serve both as a member of this council and to be entrusted with its governance for so much of the time I was with you in various capacities. I was not elected to the chairmanship, so as you all know, but I did my best to serve you as best I could under the circumstances, and I sincerely hope that you all band together and work together in every way possible to keep moving things forward in a positive way for the entire community. And I will be here as your chair working hard for you until October 1st, when Mr. Bristow becomes your new chair. And so again, congratulations to the new elected team from the executive committee. Thank you so much to my team, the current executive committee, who will serve with me until October the 1st. And we will continue working hard on our issues until such time as we hand over to the new team. And I look forward to seeing what we can achieve together. Okay, thank you, everybody. Your next quarterly council meeting will be on October the 20th and 21st of 2021. And that'll be where your new team will be in charge. And so this will be my last quarterly meeting as your chair, and it has been a pleasure. Thank you all so much. I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot, and I have so much respect for each of you. Just please take care of yourselves and stay strong. Okay, if there's nothing else, if there's no objection, we are hereby adjourned from business of the quarterly meeting.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
And thank you so much, staff. You guys worked tirelessly. Thank y'all as well.
Bye-bye.